Welcome to Panda Head Studios. Today we're talking about the first season of Transformers Beast Wars.
So for this series, it was done by production companies Hasbro and Alliance Communications, and the first episode aired September 16th, 1996.
This show is a pseudo sequel to the original cartoon from the 1980s, and it follows the descendants of the Autobots and the Decepticons, the Maximals, and the Predacons. The Predacons are led by Megatron, and he has in his team Tarantulas, Scorponok, Waspinator, Pterosaur, and Dinobot. And the Maximals, led by Optimus Primal, also have Rhinox, Cheetor, and Rat Trap. And it's essentially the show pretty much is about their struggle through a beast war to basically control this energon on a mysterious planet that they crash landed on while the Maximals were chasing the Predacons after they had stolen some special golden disc from the Cybertron or the affiliated. There's actually
It's from Cybertron.
it's but something to do with the Cybertronians and their special thing.
Yeah, but they stole it from
Yeah.
Cybertron.
Yeah, ultimately, I enjoyed this show a lot when I was a kid. I had some of the toys. I was just too poor to have most of them. But I remember for Christmas I'd ask for the toys, and like when I got like one of the ones that was actually expensive as opposed to like the $2 ones.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I remember enjoying this as a kid. To be honest, I do remember enjoying it as a kid. I even had a couple of toys at one point. The only thing I'll say though is like going back to it as an adult, I'm kind of
That's how I feel. But there's a lot of things I can appreciate in the sense of like and like it not only in that sense of like stuff you only notice as an adult. Like there's a hilarious scene where Rat Trap points his gun, like somehow gets on top of Pterosaur. Pterosaur's a pterodactyl, and Rat Trap lands on his back while they're flying around. And he points his gun at Pterosaur's equipment and threatens to blow them off, saying he's going to blow off his, I think they're parsecs or tachyons. Yeah, that's what he says. I'm going to blow off your tachyons if you don't do what I say.
yeah.
And you first you see him point the gun at his head, but then you see him just briefly pointed at between his
Lower.
legs. And it's absolutely like that those little things and it's things like that I really do
Well,
enjoy.
there's things like that, and even like some of the characters, like their growth is a lot. I can appreciate a lot more as an adult than I did as a kid.
Yeah.
As a kid, some of their growth, I was like, "Cool dino, cool or cool tiger, cool cheetah, woo!" and didn't really notice their growth much as a child. And going back, like I said, I can appreciate certain things about this, but also overall, I'm kind of like, all right, whatever.
The worst part about the show is just the inconsistency like the inconsistency in the like established what they like establishes like rules
Oh yeah, absolutely.
where like the beast form somehow has an influence but doesn't have an influence. The energon, like they have this weakness to where energon, if they're in their battle mode, their robot form too long, that they get like an effect on it, but it really only
And it can put them into
Stasis.
lock.
stasis lock.
Yeah, it'll put them in. It can potentially put them into stasis lock. And there are episodes where you see them go into their or in their transformed form, and they fight for 2 minutes, and then the stasis lock notification happens. And other times they're in their transformed form for the entire episode.
Yep.
And there's just no consistency in how long it's supposed to be.
And they don't give you a good sense of like the environment, so you don't
Oh,
know
no.
that there's like energon around, because they do make it clear that if they're like close to a large concentration of energon, it's gonna have that impact.
The impact will be worse.
Yeah, the impact will be worse and faster, but they don't clearly establish that most of the time. There's a few episodes where they do, especially early on.
Yeah, that's true. But a lot of times they don't. A lot of times it's unclear where the energon is, or like why it's so quick, or why they can do it for so long.
And there's a lot of like just like stupid things that I don't understand why they were the writing choice. Pterosaur rebels against Megatron probably 17 times in the 26 episodes it's in the season.
At least.
And every single time, Megatron essentially says he's not going to trust him anymore. And then the next episode, it's like a typical episodic thing. Even though there's an overarching story, there's all sorts of plot threads. They do have character growth for 2 characters.
Yeah.
And then just a little bit of development for the rest of them.
Yeah, there's 2 characters that get actual growth, and the rest get mild development. Especially on the Predacon side. They get the least amount of growth and development.
Yeah, the Predacons, there's absolutely no... They're literally the same exact characters every single time.
What I find funny about Pterosaur's rebelling all the time is that Megatron ultimately at the end of it, quote unquote, forgives him. Or lets it slide, I should say. That's a better way for that handling. But Dinobot at the very beginning of the show calls Megatron an idiot and that he wants to take control of the Predacons and gets kicked off the team. And I should say blown off the team because he gets shot with a rocket off screen.
Because Scorponok's the only Predacon who's not out.
Yeah, the only one.
Only one who's insanely loyal until you meet Rampage in like episode 15 or 16.
But the fact that like Dinobot got kicked off the team for one rebelling incident, and Pterosaur does it all the time is annoying. And I dislike it because at least to me, the whole purpose of that was just so that the Maximals and Predacons had the same number of bots on their team.
Well, that's the issue with the inconsistency that, like, when you're a kid and you're seeing it weekly, or maybe the show was released like every.
It was weekly, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it was weekly. Yeah, because it was not. But it helped carry what was going on in the you wouldn't notice it as much.
Yeah, I think my problem is because I'm a lot older. I notice those types of inconsistencies. As a child, I'm just like, ooh, they put a dinosaur on the Maximal side. Awesome. Yeah. Like, as a kid, I didn't care. As a kid, it didn't, whatever. I don't care. Like, I didn't pick up on those things.
Yeah, and you were just waiting for them to shoot at each other and, like, what drama they specifically introduced, like, in...
Oh, no. As a kid, I was waiting for them to shoot at each other. I didn't care about the drama.
Yeah, that's fair.
I still mostly don't care about the drama, to be fair.
Oh, well, that's most of the drama is real. Like the dramatic moments are really bad. Like the third episode, it's kind of creepy to where Tarantulas traps Cheetor in a web and then is going to suck his juices and talks about, he laments out loud about how he enjoys draining the juices out of people. Very scary. Well, in a way,
it is creepy in its own way.
Yeah.
But my problem with that, like, as much as that was enjoyable, it only happens once.
Well, yeah. Well, there's a couple other times where he traps people, but you don't see him do
but
that.
But he
all
doesn't become that creepy. Like,
his characters are very inconsistent. To where sometimes he's cowardly, and sometimes he's trying to eat, and he only tries to eat.
And at the end, he tries to be devious.
Yeah. And then the fourth episode, that episode was really interesting. In the sense of it kind of answered a question that you may get, how come they don't just blow each other up?
Yeah.
With the heavy firepower, and it's because they show that the bases are linked with this energon. So if they blow one base up, or then the other base will blow up because there's this giant interconnected web of energon. Even though the energon is the energy source, so you'd think there's a huge deposit of energon right below us, better get it, but it's got to be stabilized, and only Tarantulas has the experience to process the energon that's unstable.
Why didn't the Predacons just go down below their own base, have him process it to make it stable, get it, process it far enough down the line so that if they blew up the Maximal base, they wouldn't get hurt.
But that only comes up in that episode.
Never talk about it again.
And there's actually episodes where it starts off with them looking for energon, be it a Predacon or Maximal, and then the other side, usually the Maximals are doing something, then the Predacons just come out of nowhere and attack. Because that's all they seem to be doing is just attack. The Predacons just we just got to attack the Maximals. That's all we're interested in is attack the Maximals.
Yeah.
And every once in a while they're trying to do something where like Maximals have an episode where like, oh, let's build a giant satellite dish to talk to each other because Tigertron doesn't have to live with us. And then they just blow it up. Like the Decepticons just show up, blow up the communication device.
Wrong communication device.
Oh yeah. They don't blow it up. They don't go and blow it up, and they never mention that communication device again.
Yeah. They do blow up a different communication device though.
And it's one of the only times that the Predacons win.
Yeah, because Cybertron sends a probe over into that solar system,
Looking for the Axel on the ship of the Maximals.
Yeah, and the Maximals have to create a tower array where they mimic their black box, I think.
And for some reason, it has to be in Predacon territory.
I think they explained it because they needed it at a certain point along the trajectory. And the point happened to be in Predacon territory. I think that one they actually justify. It's one of the few times that they justify their actions.
I just love how the Predacon and Maximal, they have territory, but they never define it for you.
Oh, never, not once.
They just mention that there's Predacon and Decepticon, or Predacon
And the map that they
territory.
And the map that they occasionally show is this really terrible holographic display, which gives you a vague, super vague idea of the terrain, where it goes, this is us, that's them over there. But there's no distancing. You can't be like, because like if you were to look at that and I were to be like look at a map and put 2 points there, I'd be like, oh, I can get there in a few hours. But are they really a few hours? Like, it's unclear how far away they are.
It's incredibly inconsistent, and that, like, I've been trying to avoid this subject, but that's one of the worst parts. Even though I'm fine with, I think it looks good in its own way. It's the animation style and choices that they make.
See, I don't like it. I appreciated it as a kid. It was great as a kid. As an adult, though, I can't get into it. It's bothersome for me. I get it. It's one of the first, or it either is the first or one of the first.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's one of the first.
Completely computer generated cartoons.
And that is awesome. That does give it a lot of credit, and I do respect it for that. But things have come along so much further that
certain CGI,
I get.
certain
I mean,
CGI
there
holds up. Like Terminator 2 still looks good to this day. Spawn, a movie that's only a couple years older, looked bad then.
yeah, that is true. Like, it's not all great. Like, I'm not saying that everything now is better than that. There's definitely stuff that's not, but overall, it has improved.
You got to say that there are certain animes that have worse quality than this show.
I'm not saying that there's not. It's just overall, it has gotten significantly better. That's my point.
Oh yeah, and I absolutely agree that there's some amazing, even like, and there are certain modern Transformers shows which I've never watched. Like I have Beast Wars, but I've seen parts of it just by advertisements and stuff. Looks worse.
Yeah,
they for some reason.
Yeah,
that's why that's why I can't get into shows like Rick and Morty and Steven Universe. It seems like the animation quality was going way up, and then just plummeted. But they still want and get the same amount of. They get more money than I guarantee you. Steven Universes, Rick and Morty, like My Little Pony. What other?
My Little Pony stayed the same animation quality the whole time. So did Rick and Morty. Like they've all.
Well, they stayed the same quality, but I'm saying what I'm suggesting is they cost more money, and the quality isn't as good. Like I actually think, like I mean, Rick and Morty is very good in its own way, even though I'm not a huge fan of that show. Like its quality, like I would honestly argue that this show looks more crisp in the sense of like the light, like these, like there's a lot of flaws in it, like. The land looks like you're playing an N64 game. Like the environments look like when you played an N64 and like first generation minus Super Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time.
But those were highly special.
Those are works of art. But like the Castlevania game, the two Castlevania games on 64, they're pretty much probably made in the same engine and all that, look like crap. And that's exactly how I feel. Like it's like this is like the Super Mario 64 of the, like, here's what we can do here's what you should be doing, here's the rules, here's the box, make it better. And they did with, like, Mario Sunshine and GameCube.
Yeah.
it took that same box and it
And
made
improved
better.
upon it.
Way improved upon it so much, even though I like Mary 64 Months Sunshine. But my point is, like, it just looks to where it seems like they're going downhill. Steven Universe is an excellent example of like a superhero show, very episodic. There's not really any consequences for things. There's like little bits of taste and growth, even though I would get swarmed by people who are huge fans of Steven Universe. But I just would argue that this show looks better than stuff like that. And sometimes it's better writing, but I will give Steven Universe, it has some decent writing.
Steven Universe actually has some pretty good writing.
And follows its rules, where this show does not.
Even the writing on this show, I'm kind of mixed on. Because for me, like, the beginning is real, like, the beginning few episodes, I'd say beginning, like, 8 or so, are really nice. I enjoy them. As much as they're very, like, sort of to the point with no ambiguity in their conversations, it's okay. The middle bit, I take it, leave it, I don't care. The ending, I think, got a lot better because you have a bit more ambiguity. You have characters bouncing off each other a lot better. Like for a pretty good example is actually Rat Trap. The whole series or the whole season, he constantly is snarky and makes kind of backhanded remarks. And in the beginning, he gets shut down all the time. Knock it off. Don't do that. Go do the job. In later episodes, he's still being told to go do his job. But he's not getting shut down for being snarky. He's not being shut down for making a quip. He's allowed to make these quips, and he still goes and does whatever he's asked to do, but he's allowed to be his cynical self without getting told that's wrong.
Well, that's one of the biggest problems is like, or not problem, but that's one of the few good qualities of the show. Like, and like the problem is like Optimus Prime never really has an arc. He's always just a confident leader who knows exactly what's going on. Rhinox is always just this quiet scientific guy who's just who just can figure out where he's very wise. He's the wise one of the group, and Rat Trap is always the one who has just got something stupid to say. And Cheetor is just like, it's like hanging out with a teenager.
Yeah. The first Maximal that we see get any real growth is actually Dinobot, who's the one that changed sides. He actually has a character growth and arc through the whole thing. And we get to see really good steps in it. I will give them credit. They did I think they did a great job with his character arc. Because initially he starts constantly wanting to take over the Maximals. It's his Predacon nature. It's how he is.
Constantly questioning their actions and like wanting to be way more aggressive. Like in the 4th episode, he wants to send a bomb over to the Decepticon base.
Exactly.
And then eventually, like, you can see that he's not... So he still wants to fight. He still talks about being a soldier. But he's not so quick to the aggression. He actually starts to kind of take on some of the more Maximal habits. Even though he makes mention numerous times of, like, his Predacon heritage and his, like, ultra-aggressive...
Which actually is one good point. There is an episode, we briefly talked about it, with the array to communicate with the probe that Cybertron sent. That episode is actually, I think, is one of the best examples for Dinobot's mentality. Because Dinobot at the start of it is being snippy and snide and very short in his responses. Why do you want to do this? This doesn't make... Like, in a little bit more in an aggressive manner than he has been.
But he's still helping them.
He's still helping them.
That's something I really like, is show the growth of his character.
Absolutely.
That he's honorable and he's going... He knows the situation is not going to be what he...
Yeah, and it's absolutely commendable of him, but as the episode progresses, he finally gets confronted about why he's being so snide and hostile. And he says, because I am a Predacon. You treat me as a Maximal, you treat me as an equal, but when you go back to when we go back to Cybertron, I'm a Predacon. I will be treated as such. And Optus makes a comment about the fact that they'll make sure that doesn't happen. And one thing I will give Dinobot credit for is he questions that. He goes, "What?" I forget exactly what he says, but it's something. It comes down to the effect of, "What can you do?" Because if you think about the show, Optimus is in charge of an exploratory ship. He's not a commander at Cybertron. It's unclear whether he has any influence whatsoever in Cybertron. So I get Dinobot's perspective in that. And I think it's a fantastic episode, like I said, for his mentality. And I do like, and once they fail, he ends up being a little bit more. That's really when you see the shift from I want to be hostile all the time to I want to be hostile, but I'll listen to what you guys have to say.
Well, and they have an episode where him and Rat Trap. There's an episode a little later on from that where him and Rat Trap are like fighting at each other like children, and then Optimus, and Rhinox gets a Energon poison, where he just like burps and shoots out a giant like Kamehameha blast of Energon energy and just causes all sorts of damage. And because Dinobot and Rat Trap are bickering so much, Optimus just sends them off on some arbitrary mission, and then they end up getting captured and have to like work together to get out of the situation. And in the following episodes, they actually are friendly, way more friendly to each other, even though they're always bashing each other. It has that. It has of their friends instead of that they hate each other.
Yeah, instead of it being like an antagonistic banter, it changes after that episode to a friendly banter.
But that episode has the silliest, and it made me laugh.
And most
really
ridiculous.
Hard. And most ridiculous. But they defeat Megatron by having Rhinox eats a bunch of wild beans, and it gives him gas, and he just turns around and blows a nuclear energon fart and takes out Megatron. And it's absolutely hilarious because it's kind of like
it's hilarious. I'll give it that. But at the same time, it's
like
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Especially since Megatron comments about the fact that this is the most
humiliating defeat ever.
Yeah.
And that's like the worst part is that they didn't need that. They didn't need that little piece. If they would just had the death part and then the Maximals walk away in the sunshine and the Decepticons are just kind of like horking in a river or something.
They didn't even need that, like,
just end it right there. Just nuke, and then the Maximals are happy. And and then they just say
nuke. Grab it. It's have the nuke happen. Grab the
cure
vaccine.
The vaccine, yeah.
And the Maximals leave. Episode over. Would have been fine. You don't need to comment on it. You don't need to have any Decepticons do any horking or that's just smart explosion. Grab the vaccine. Leave. End of episode. Would have been much better. Still would have been ridiculous, but would have been much better.
And I honestly thought at first I thought he was just going to blow, because the way hippos and rhinos use the bathroom is pretty funny, and that's what I thought they were
doing. That's where I thought they were going initially.
And they do a death fart, and I'm like, that was, at least they didn't have the other aspect of what I was thinking was going to happen. But I thought that's what made it so funny to me. It's because Megatron knew what was happening. Like, he doesn't try and shoot him or anything. He's just like, no.
And I do want to say, like, the other character that, because as the story progresses, we actually get introduced to more and more both Maximals and Predacons. I think we get introduced, I believe it was total 4.
Yeah, four new characters. First, it's a Tigertron, a white tiger. Then there's Black Arachnia, who's a
Black Widow.
Black Widow spider. Thank you. Then there's
Air-Razor,
who's a Falcon. Okay,
Falcon or is it?
I'm pretty sure it's a Peregrine Falcon because of the way they go her dive.
Right.
Like, I think
I'm pretty sure
that's
you're right.
what they're supposed to be, and I do love how like every character until Air-Razor has a name of besides Optimus Primal and Megatron, they have a name that's similar to their animal.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I'm Air-Razor, like you're not Hawk Bot or some silly
Falcatron.
Falcatron or some. And then the next character is one of my favorites in the whole show, even though he's the Team Rocket.
Oh, he's absolutely the Team Rocket.
He's the Team Rocket of the show, where he's just like, they always react in such fear to him, but he actually has some menace to him because he shoots the missiles from GoldenEye on N64.
Yeah.
It's the same sound effect, but he shoots missiles, and he also has flamethrowers, even though usually he's just shooting missiles.
Yeah, he's usually shooting missiles up until he gets really annoyed and goes, burn!
Yeah. And his name is Rampage, and he's a fire ant.
Yeah.
And he, for some reason, can fly with his propulsion, and when none of the other robots besides Optimus can fly in their battle mode like that.
No, the ones that their beast mode can fly, they can fly in their combat modes.
Yeah. I just thought it was kind of, but they had to even out. They, like you said,
They're evening
they
it
gotta
out.
keep everything super even. And but that's where, like, this show I've been criticized, like, oh, this is a glorified commercial, but it's like, the fact that they didn't just keep throwing characters at you, and
Oh, yeah, if this was a glorified commercial, I would say probably every 3 episodes at the high end, we would have had a new introduction.
and a new character. But like, one of the biggest problems is it seems like the writers of the episodes forget certain characters exist.
Yeah.
Or it's really good writing and the character got injured and they're sitting there recovering and they just make no mention of them recovering. Because it's like Dinobot disappears for like 5 episodes. And sometimes he's just kind of there like, I'm Dinobot, and then he doesn't talk.
He doesn't do anything, yeah.
When his character naturally does some. Same thing with Rampage. But that's what gave me the idea of maybe they got injured in the previous episode and they're recovering and they actually was good writing. But I think I'm thinking
I think
too highly.
I think you're thinking too highly.
Where Rampage gets obliterated like a Team Rocket style, where he just gets blown to pieces. Which I wish that would happen to Team Rocket after the 300th time. But ultimately, like that, he was just like this level of character. He's apparently overwhelmed by his beast mode, which is one of the most inconsistent plot things. To where like,
Oh, so inconsistent. There is one character that it's actually consistent with. Everyone else it is completely inconsistent with.
Tigertron, right?
That's Tigertron. He's the only other one other than Rampage that his beast mode has some effect on his personality. Because when he landed and his pod crashed, it damaged his memory circuits. That's what it was. That's why he's a bit more bestial than the other. That's also why he doesn't stay with the Maximals, because he doesn't fully understand who he is. And even going on, like, it does seem that he somewhat gains his memory back, but I guess because he spent so much time away, he continues to want to stay away. And so he's the only other one other than Rampage that his animal self seemingly has an effect on his character.
To where Tarantulas, sometimes he's a spider who wants to eat people, and other times he's just...
And the rest of the time he's not, because he wants to eat people like, what, twice?
Well, and that's one thing I actually do want to praise them on, is that was something very common in like 70s, 80s,
Yeah.
and even in the 90s, was the fact that the villains would always be more than happy to say that the bad guys, and the good guys would always say the good guys. And the Maximals do call themselves the heroes, or mostly Rat Trap. But the Maximals never call themselves like the bad guys or evil, or like the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. So
Yeah.
I will praise them on that. They don't necessarily show themselves as like the heroes of the situation. They're clearly like maniacs.
Like, even... Well, they don't say that they're the bad guys, but at the last 2 episodes when... the aliens... Oh, by the way, the show has aliens.
Surprise, surprise.
Go figure. And I don't mean like...
The robots.
I don't mean the robots. I don't mean the Transformers. I mean there's other aliens. But the aliens apparently set up the planet that they're on as an experiment, and because the Maximals and Predacons landed on it and have been duking it out, have screwed up the experiment by duking it out and destroying floating mountains and what have you. They damaged the experiment. Point is.
Well, there's an episode where Tigertron gets knocked into like a cloud, and it turns out there's like a floating island hidden in there, and it's actually a puzzle, and the Predacons and the Maximals have to race to get to the center of the island, and of course Black Arachnia gets there first, gets all the power immediately. Like, I'm gonna take over the Decepticons, but first I'm attacking the Maximals, and then Tigertron just blows a hole in the door, blows up the thing, and then talks about how like this was a paradox. You were there for 10 minutes,
Yeah.
and you already made the decision. But I mean, it's a show, but it's a two-parter, which is
It's still like,
which is very rare for even kid shows, to where they
yeah,
have
this
so
show
many
actually has three two-parters.
Yeah, I think it's 3 or 4 because the first 2 episodes.
It's the first 2 episodes, the last 2 episodes, and then those 2 episodes that involve the floating island paradise.
Yeah,
I think that's it.
The one thing I really found hilarious was there was 3 episodes that didn't acknowledge each other whatsoever. Are all about the importance of their beast mode.
Oh, yeah.
And they're 3 separate episodes, and it always ends with like the same philosophical garbage of how they gotta embrace their like inner beast mode and how like it's this whole thing, which is in some ways kind of cool because they're trying to tell kids like to like respect to like the nature and all this stuff. But on the other hand, it's just kind of like
You did it 3
you
times.
did it 3 times, and it's really close. Like it's right in the middle in the fluff when they're doing the fluff of the actual story.
To be fair, most of the story is fluff.
Yes. But but there's at least breadcrumbs like that floating island thing.
Yeah,
has the
there
thing.
are breadcrumbs.
And them going to the pod. First there's like an alien pod that they find, and then they go to find the floating island. There's little crumbs amongst all the fluff where they're like.
Yes, I'm not denying that there are crumbs. I'm just saying that there's a lot of fluff.
More than definitely agree with that. Like 3 episodes of the same exact point of them having to understand their beast mode. There's like one where they go blind and then they make a lecture about how to appreciate their beast mode. Another one where Megatron somehow steals, he breaks into their base and steals this device that protects the ship.
Yeah.
From getting the energon sickness, and the Maximals have to stay in their beast mode, and so they have to sleep in their beast form, and they start having dreams. And it causes them just to turn into their animals. And then Tigertron has to lecture them about that, which was the first episode. I thought that episode was really awesome. Besides the fact that the Decepticons can break into the base and don't just like kill them all or anything. And they constantly talk about wanting to destroy the Maximals. And then the other one is Tigertron, which is another really good episode, and it happens around the end, where Tigertron has one of his speed. For some reason, there's just like a bunch of white tigers here. Nobody told them that horrible inbreeding, but it's a cool transformer and they look beautiful. But like he has one that's his friend and has a name. I forgot what its name is.
Yeah, I forgot the name.
But he dies, and then he questions whether or not he still wants to participate.
To be fair, the point of that was because his friend dies because of his actions, because he's fighting Rampage and shoots one of his bullets, and Rampage gets out of the way of it, and it goes and explodes a mountaintop, and his friend is on that mountain and gets crushed. So Tigertron's whole reasoning for questioning is because his friend died due to his actions.
Yeah.
Which is the one thing I will give that particular episode being different than the other 2. It's not so much about Tigertron like wanting to be more with nature. It's more so much... It has more to do with Tigertron wanting to be away from the Beast Wars. And that's another time we actually see Dinobot's growth in that too, when he's confronting Tigertron about it.
Yeah.
And trying to point out the fact that you're a warrior. You don't get to walk away from this. There's not an option to.
Yeah. And also just the fact that he actually like talks to him. He doesn't just try and like beat him up or anything. Like,
yeah.
And
even though he constantly talks about, you betrayed us, you want to go away, fine, I'll destroy you.
Yeah.
He's constantly telling him he's going to destroy him the entire time. But you can obviously tell he's intentionally bluffing it.
It's so sad too, because they of course the Maximals are the main character, but every once in a while they'll show the Predacons, and they're the exact same thing, always doing some silly scheme, like Cobra from G.I. Joe, or so cliched in a villain when like Megatron could have been a heck of a lot more clever and even Pterosaur. Tarantulas is the only one who's kind of clever, but always just gets foiled because he should when he's actually doing like really smart things. He just doesn't like these Decepticons. The Decepticons always talk about how destructive they want to be, but then they never pull the trigger. I mean,
Yeah.
kid show makes sense, and also it shows that both Maximals and Decepticons are actually really resilient in the fact that they can take a ton of punishment.
Yes.
Like and they get broken into pieces all the time. Like that's one of my favorite episodes. It's I think it's like episode 8 or 9, where there's like a mythic pod in this. I forgot what they're. It's kind of like the Stonehenge, except for it's got like this thing, but a alien pod lands there, and they're trying to communicate with it, and it like sucks up Optimus. So Rhinox is like, he just invents a machine that can extract the Optimus from it. Even Rhinox is like, I gotta build this magic machine because I'm the guy who can do that. And while he's like doing that, working on it, and the rest of the Maximals are fighting the Predacons, who of course are trying to foil all that and take the control of the pod thing for themselves. And Waspinator like sneaks around the whole thing, and he's sneaking up on Rhinox, and you think that he's going to get Rhinox or something's going to go right. And then Rhinox just pulls out his Gatling gun with one arm while still operating the machine and just mauls Waspinator, and you see him get shot. And it's like the scene from RoboCop, the extended edition, where Ed 209 just shoots the executive, the faceless executive, mercilessly, for way longer than necessary to deal with this person, and just Waspinator falls apart. And I love that scene because one, I love Rhinox. Like Rhino's one of my favorite animals. Rhinox is one of my favorite characters, and Gatling guns are just cool.
Yeah.
Like it just had all the awesome parts, and Waspinator is the second most annoying character in the show. Third. Because I would definitely say Pterosaur, Blackarachnia, Waspinator.
See, I thought Waspinator was more annoying than Blackarachnia, personally.
Well,
I agree on Pterosaur, absolutely. Just for me, it's Pterosaur, Waspinator, Blackarachnia. Same list, just slightly different order.
Blackarachnia is like, that's one of the worst characters that they have, who should be so much cooler. She's actually smart. She does smart things, and then they always just like it's always like they're kneecapping her at the last moment, so she doesn't actually do the clever thing. Like when she takes over the island to go destroy the Maximal base, and she gets like superpower, and they do nothing with that. They don't let her stay with that power. She literally gets that power for an episode, and then it's gone. She doesn't fight anyone with it.
Yeah.
She doesn't. The only cool thing she does is she causes the Death Laser to have like a super scary video game moment.
Yeah.
That's it. She doesn't like. They don't do anything with that power. Like even when Pterosaur got hit.
Even when Pterosaur got powered up, he beat down Megatron. Then he found out he couldn't retain the power, so he had to keep going back to the island. And they blew up the island.
Yep.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and there's just so much dumb in this show.
I still love the action and the music.
The music, I will not question, is amazing.
That is probably why I liked it too when I was a kid. It's just that intro where it has that guitar where it's just finger tapping and it's just like
the music for this is very good. A lot of the action, I will say, is very good. There's some that I was kind of whatever on. But that's also, it was the action that was meant to be bland. It was, we're going to distract them while something more interesting is going on somewhere else. Like, that's why I was kind of bland on some of that.
Yeah.
Except for the Death Blazer at the end. I don't agree that was good action.
Yeah, that was absolutely
That was bad. That was ridiculous and dumb.
It was just, hey, come back for the next season.
Yeah.
And find out.
Yeah. I will say, though, the one cool thing about the ending, because aliens decide they're the aliens that created this planet and set up some sort of experiment, decide that because the Predacons and Maximals have gotten into a fight, have ruined the experiment, and thus the whole thing needs to be wiped out, and there's no way to correct it. Which, from a scientific standpoint, they're correct. but they turn one of the two moons this planet has into a giant death laser. And Optimus ends up having to fly one of their escape pods into. The goal is to fly it as close to the death laser as possible with some sort of high intensity explosive device to blow up it. And his goal is to leave before setting up 20 mic. What do they call it?
Micro.
It's not microseconds.
Or something like that.
Cycles, microcycles. That's what they say. And to leave the pod 20 microcycles before it explodes. And of course, Megatron. This is one of the few times Megatron is successful because he tampered with the pod, and so Optimus cannot escape. And when everything explodes, if you're paying attention in the debris, you actually get to see Optimus's head flying through space.
Well, ultimately, and with that kind of silly ending, and with the in and out and ups and downs of everything, when I think back to it when I was a kid, absolutely loved it. I'm just reiterating that point. But
yeah, like I said, as a kid, I agree. I loved it.
And I think even if you have kids, or you are a kid, or you just are a die-hard Transformers fan, this is definitely a show for you. But otherwise, it's genuinely a slog to get through some of these episodes.
Absolutely.
It does make good background noise because it's really easy to know what's going on.
Yeah,
And
if it's background noise, it's fine. But at the same time,
and the music is that great.
Yeah, just go listen to the soundtrack then. Yeah, I'd go find clips of the music on YouTube.
I still have there's just this big nostalgia thing for me where I love the toys. I love most of the characters, excluding some of the lamer ones, like Pterosaur and Waspinator.
And Black Rectangle.
I wouldn't recommend this show unless you're showing it to your kids, you're your diehard fan, or you just got a big nostalgia, or you just want some good background noise with some fun music every once in a while, and 64 sound effects.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Have a good one.
Thanks for watching.